Great, Jen. Thank you so much for hosting tonight, to our patrons in the audience tonight. Obviously, I wish I could be there in Warrenville in person, but of course, we're all kind of making the adjustments in our lives to, of course, keep other people safe as well as ourselves. So, with that, welcome to Searching for South America. Our agenda tonight is broken up into three parts. First, before the search. This is where I will go over some of the inspiration as well as preparation for the journey we're about to share together. And then, of course, the meat and potatoes tonight, searching for South America. Here, I'll take you through each of the 8 countries that I visited. We'll talk about a bit as far as cultures and some successes as well as challenges. And I'll give you some proverbial oases and detours. And lastly, after the search, this is where you can type in your questions during the presentation or near the end, and I will answer all of your questions. Looking forward to those. First, as promised, before the search, a quick note, all of the photos I took tonight, I did with this iPhone XS Max. This is the phone that Apple released about 2 years ago. I took nearly 25,000 pictures. Don't worry, I'm not going to show them all to you, and you probably don't want to see them all anyway. I kept my favorite 25%, and tonight we'll look at approximately 250. Here's the only picture I didn't take. It's a picture of my grandma and grandpa. Grandpa Harry and Grandma Pat were married for 60 years, and they traveled 90 countries together, 90. And I actually remember this photo hanging in their apartment. And from the age of 3, I thought, what is that white building behind them? What is that beautiful red garment that Grandma is wrapped in? Grandma and Grandpa always encouraged my cousins and I to flip through their photo albums, to take their souvenirs off the shelves, and to just get involved and get excited. Chicagoland happens to be quite a melting pot itself. So any ways that my grandparents could get my cousins and I into the city to explore and to enjoy, we certainly did. And you can imagine how full circle a moment it was to stand where they had 30 years prior. Of course, this is the Taj Mahal in Agra, India. I used to teach elementary school, kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, and then I got a bit tired of the politics and red tape and decided that I was eager to explore the world. So in 2015, I took that nearly 2-year trip around the world and came back in 2017 to basically take on this public speaking gig, volunteering at schools, and then also presenting to libraries, senior living facilities, and more. So it's quite a fun way to continue to be an educator in sort of the adult version. And then I got itchy feet again, and in 2019, of course, went to South America, and that's what we're about to do today. And probably just like you, a trip starts by looking at a map and dreaming a bit, getting excited about the places that people have recommended, maybe checking out books at the library, following travel blogs online, whatever it might be. I had hatched a very basic plan. I knew that if I was going to South America, I would want to hike the Inca Trail. Next, I wanted to get my TEFL certificate. This stands for Teaching English as a Foreign Language. We'll learn more about that in a bit. Next, living in cities of interest. I think the longer you can stay in one place and really become a local as much as possible, the more you're going to get out of your journey. And as you're sensing a theme already, I am quite a teacher, certainly passionate about that. So getting to teach English both online and in person, I was looking forward to doing. And that's actually the reality, though. If you take a look at my plan, it evolved into basically a 58-city trip through 8 countries. And as you know, my trip lasted over 1 year long. The week leading up to my trip was utter chaos. It seems like no matter how much time you plan ahead, that inevitably you're going to be running around those few days before. And this was no exception. I had to sell my car in a blizzard. Fortunately, it performed well in the snow, so I sold it about 36 hours before South America. You know, ordering last minute items on Amazon, running in and out of local stores, just packing my backpack, repacking it. Does the electric toothbrush stay? Does it go? Managed to get a final meal with my family on the left there. Probably the most difficult part though was telling my black lab Sadie that I was going on another long-term journey. I think her look says it all. Welcome to Searching for South America. Our first country tonight is Peru, and you'll notice on the continent map in the lower left, this will be provided for each of the countries we visit, just to give you a spatial recognition of where we'll be going. Peru is sort of a centralized country in South America, hugging the West Coast. And that is actually the passport stamp in this passport right here. You'll get to take a look at what all of those look like tonight. I'm sure you're recognizing Machu Picchu, but before we go there, we must land in Lima, which is, in my opinion, the culinary capital of all of South America. So quite a fun place to start and fill my tummy with something as basic as roasted chicken. And this is served at pollerias, which are no-frills chicken houses that are basically dotted all throughout big cities as well as tiny towns. Really, frankly, a Peruvian staple. Chicken that size runs about $2.50, and you get all those sides and fixins along with it. On the left, we have Inca Cola. This is a bubblegum flavored cola. And on the right, you may think it's grilled steak. Oh no, it's grilled alpaca. And this is quite a common meat served to Peruvians. I liked my alpaca rare to medium rare. I wanted to include a ceviche recipe. You'll get this along with several other resources that we'll go over tonight in my resource guide, which we'll make sure to email you if you have not already received it. And ceviche is arguably the signature dish of Peru. Pretty simple dish and quite unique and delicious. You cut a fresh white fish into bite-sized pieces. Then you salt the surface, cover it with leche de tigre. This is a citrus-based marinade. Next, you're gonna add red onions and chilies for a bit of kick, kind of depending on your spice level. And lastly, you're refrigerating it for 2 to 3 hours. And it's during this refrigeration period that the acids of the lime juice and the leche de tigre are technically cooking the ceviche. So while no heat is actually applied, this does technically get cooked. Our first oasis tonight is staying connected. You could probably imagine that being a solo backpacker, it was integral and actually necessary to stay connected to my loved ones, especially for such a long trip like I took. The first is WhatsApp, and actually Facebook Messenger is quite similar. You've probably used one or both. You can do audio recordings, you can do audio phone calls as well as video, texting to one another. And this is basically for anybody that has a Facebook account or a WhatsApp account. So it's free, it's easy to download on your Apple device or your Android. Google Hangouts also similar. You could even make some local calls for free with Google Hangouts. Furthermore, I have 3 apps here that were quite helpful on my journey. The first was Duolingo. This is a language learning app. Duolingo offers free learning of over 200 languages. You can also get an upgraded paid version that runs something like $8 to $10 a month. But of course you don't have to. I was able to use the free version to build my Spanish vocabulary as well as put together sentences and even learning to conjugate verbs. Next is Google Maps. I'm sure you're familiar with this one as well, but I just wanted to remind you about the public transportation feature, which basically tells you if there are any delays in the big city that you might be visiting, as well as the fastest current public transportation option at that time. And lastly, Traby Pockets. This was really helpful. This allows you to budget and really hold yourself accountable, and to also categorize your spending on things like food and drink, as well as entertainment, accommodation, and of course, transportation. Some other categories too, but I would kind of look at those main ones and say, oh, you know, I overdid the partying a bit this weekend. I'm going to cut that back 10% or 15% and adjust accordingly. So some people kind of wing it when they are traveling. I am certainly guilty of that. But for my South America trip, I wanted to formalize the spending process, and it did definitely help. On to Arequipa. We are still in Peru. And here I stayed for a month. It is near Colca Canyon, and Arequipa is quite a beautiful city. The main reason I was brought there, though, was that it was assigned by my TEFL school. And again, that stands for Teaching English as a Foreign Language. Here, Instituto de Inglés had a very rigorous and intense English teaching program. There I am with my student teaching colleagues as well as my professors. And in that 1 month of classes, our professors really put us through the ringer. You know, we had to sit through, you know, English lectures, because of course, in order to teach English, you have to understand the basics of grammar, the pedagogy, you know, and philosophies of education. Then we had to apply what we had learned to actually instructing. So this is where we were observing other teachers that were qualified, as well as student teaching, being observed by our professors who would share feedback with us, and then they would look for marked improvement from one lesson to the other. And then lastly, we of course had to teach students. We're talking kids as young as 5, all the way to senior citizens. I think I instructed a Peruvian woman in her mid-80s. After 1 month, I received a certificate of distinction. And what that essentially means is that I can teach English anywhere around the world with one of the, if not the highest qualification possible. And this is just very exciting because then you can sort of put your learning to work and hopefully make some money with it. Here's somebody who has already been making money with her TEFL certificate. This is Sarah Charlton, who I student taught alongside, and she has some information to share with you.
Hello, my name is Sarah Charlton and I'm from Mississippi, but I've been living in Latin America for the past 2 years. I started in Peru where I got my TEFL certification to teach English and thought I was only going to be there for a month, but ended up staying for a year and a half. Most recently, I lived in Mexico and really loved it. Um, some of the challenges might be like getting water. You can't just turn on the tap and drink water, but really small things like that. I would tell everybody don't worry about the language barrier because when you have to learn a language, you learn it very quickly. It's really been a great experience for me, and I would suggest that you all give it a try. Really, if you have any questions about living abroad, reach out to me. Thank you, Ryan.
And thank you to Sarah. I really certainly appreciate her taking the time and putting in the effort to shoot that short video for us. And fortunately, I still get to keep in touch with Sarah, as she is not only a resource, but just frankly, a really good friend. And as promised, we're hiking Colca Canyon. This is a 2-day hike where you spend the night at the base of the canyon, which is still inhabited by locals. And it is quite a trek. You gotta have some some tough knees going both down and up. It can get a little steep, a little slippery. As mentioned, it's a 2-day trek into the world's 2nd deepest canyon. It's also home to the giant Andean condor, which we see hovering above. Quite a majestic bird indeed. And we had to wake up at 4 in the morning on that 2nd morning to begin our climb back up to the top. And I'm not a morning person, so I was not at all thrilled with that. But then a couple hours later, you know, that sun started to peak over the mountaintops, and I was just breathing in all that fresh air, feeling so athletic and invigorated. And then, of course, just getting this beautiful panoramic view of the canyon. Certainly a moment I'll never forget. On to the second month, another experience I'll never forget, getting to hike the Inca Trail. This was a 26-mile climb through the Andes Mountains. And this is a time to take a tour. I would certainly recommend it. In particular, San Travel Peru. They had a very low guest to guide ratio. It is recommended to book in advance. For example, I booked my Inca Trail tickets in November of 2018. Already in November, June of the following year was booked out. So we're talking something like 8 months in advance. The best months like May, June, and July get snatched up just like that. They only allow 500 people onto the Inca Trail each day. You can see it's a hefty price tag. You're almost at $200 a day after you're tipping the guide, who is a lifesaver, as well as the personal porters, who are arguably I could not have done Inca Trail without them. You can see there's 2 porters for every 1 tourist. That's because they were carrying 50 pounds of equipment per person on their backs. Most of these guys were in their 40s and 50s, and think about all that you need for something like 12 or 14 people. You need all the water to bathe in, as well as get boiled and drank. All the cooking equipment, all of the food. We're talking a healthy balance of fruit, vegetables, some meats, and really they would just set everything up so quickly, and we would be so amazed because they would pass us along the Inca Trail and have everything all set up for us, and then we would eat, spend the night in the tents, and off we'd go. Sure enough, an hour later they would pass us along again on the Inca Trail. And you have to keep in mind, the trail is just treacherous without any extra weight to carry. And again, these guys were sometimes exceeding 50 pounds. So thankful to them for making my Inca Trail dreams come true. And that is Dead Woman's Pass, the highest point of the trail at almost 14,000 feet above sea level. On the 4th morning, we arrived to a very cloudy Machu Picchu, and there was a point I was convinced it was going to stay like that. Fortunately, after about 20 minutes, the clouds parted ways, and then we were able to explore the ruins. Machu Picchu is Quechua for Old Mountain, and over 600 years ago, it was built as an Inca citadel for Emperor Pachacuti. And keep in mind, as we are looking at these pictures, that no mortar was used in holding together these stones, which were ground by hand and shaped by hand. And no animals helped, as well as the wheel that was not of assistance during this massive project. And it is just amazing to think that Machu Picchu has survived numerous natural disasters. Parts of it have been reassembled. However, the majority of it is as it was roughly 600 years ago. Now let's move on to Argentina. You can see it's the country that dominates the southern portion of South America. And we land in Buenos Aires, which is the capital of this unbelievable country. And here I stayed about a month and a half. What drew me to Buenos Aires? That stunning architecture, so unique. They are big meat eaters there, so I felt right at home. Lastly, it is the birthplace of tango, and I got to see a live tango performance. They also offer tango lessons, and I participated, and I don't think I'd be getting any awards or trophies anytime soon, but it is such an elegant and graceful dance, very passionate and romantic as well. Here I am taking a selfie from the balcony of my Airbnb, and sadly, just hours after this picture was taken, my apartment was robbed. And the person took all of my technology, as well as even some things like articles of clothing, and basically cleaned me out. I had very little left. And at that point, I thought, my goodness, the trip could be over right here, right now. But I filed a police report, wandered over to a local hotel, and asked this bellboy, whose name is Facundo, if I could log onto that lobby computer that you see behind us on the left there. He obliged, and then I was able to connect with my family over Facebook, let them know what happened, and then I was just amazed by what people did to come together for me. Facundo here lent me his laptop for 3 weeks. He knew I was teaching English online and that not having a laptop would disrupt that process. So thanks to him, I didn't get fired from my online teaching job. My aunt also created a GoFundMe and in 1 week raised over $3,500. Here, friends, family, and even strangers donated money, basically to give me a second chance. And I did not take that lightly. I was able to replace all of the items that were stolen, as well as get travel insurance. And it was just, it could have been an awful time, and it certainly was an awful time there for especially that first week. But like I said, people came together, they believed in me and believed in my mission. And heading into the 4th month, I wasted no time going right to Patagonia. This is a region of South America shared by both Chile and Argentina. And we start in Ushuaia, which is the southernmost city in the world. And Ushuaia is famous for its fresh caught seafood. And there is a live king crab caught by Chef Freddy's crew at his bistro. And they served just some of the best king crab as well as fresh caught fish. As mentioned, Patagonia is shared by 2 countries. So we're going to be border hopping between the 2. And you can see Chile is that long, skinny coastal country. It's over 1,000 miles long. Into Puerto Natales, Chile. You can see those autumn colors there in the foreground. I traveled Patagonia in the autumn into the winter, so you'll see some snow as well. Here we are at Mirador Base Las Torres in Torres del Paine National Park. This was quite a hike getting up there, but this was quite a peaceful spot to just sit and enjoy lunch before heading back down to earth. And if we continue through Patagonia, we get to El Calafate. This is in Argentina. And you see that big, beautiful glacier before you. That is Glaciar Perito Moreno. It's one of the few glaciers left in the world that accumulates mass at a rate similar to its loss. So that essentially means it's maintaining an equilibrium. You can see by those numbers, it is quite a large glacier. So big, in fact, that they invite you to hike and climb it if you so desire. They'll give you crampons to strap onto your boots or shoes. It is a very cold, windy, and intense hike. Fortunately, they give you whiskey on the rocks at the end. And of course, those rocks are, you guessed it, taken directly from the glacier itself. Now, the first detour tonight is transportation woes. I think my main takeaway for you here is to have travel insurance, because your apartment could get robbed, or it could be something much less dramatic, just like maybe having a short canceled flight. But you know, health issues can pop up. You want to cover yourself, and travel insurance abroad for backpackers at least costs something like $60 to $100 a month. And I've really benefited from it when I've had it, and I've also not benefited from it when I was trying to pinch pennies. So I say play it safe if you can. You know, long haul bus rides, these are another woe you might encounter in South America. You'll save money because of course they're cheaper than flights, but they are much less comfortable. Usually the bathrooms are only used for number 1, the seats won't recline 180 degrees, and the air conditioning is broken in some of the countries, the continent's hottest countries. So just keep that in mind when you're weighing comfort versus cost. And lastly, public transportation. Generally, the rule of thumb, at least in South America, the larger the city, the more reliable and desirable the public transportation. As we continue through Patagonia, I want to take you to Lomo del Pligue Tumbado. This was just basically in the middle of winter at this point, which the positive side was that there were hardly any other tourists. On this particular day, in my 8-hour round trip hike all by myself, I only came across one other hiker who was way in the distance. So you're kind of standing here, feeling like you're king of the world and just looking down at this unbelievable, untouched earth and just taking in the moment. And it was so rewarding. And I think really some of the most beautiful natural sights that I've ever seen in the 43 countries that I've visited to date. The most difficult climb of my life was on an active volcano near Pucan, Chile called Volcan Villarrica. Altitude was high, so a couple of my friends here got really bad Charlie horses. They were on the snowy ground, writhing, just screaming in agony. It looked so painful. I can only imagine how badly they felt. What else? We had to use ice picks. I'd never held one of those in my life. We got to the top of Volcan Villarrica, and I really felt like my hands were about to fall off. I just could not get warm. Fortunately, my guide had these superhuman gloves that he let me borrow for a while. And then a fun fact, you can actually sled down Volcan Villarrica, and that's exactly what we did. And that was much more fun than that 5-hour climb up to the top. But oh my goodness, the views, another thing I'll never forget. And as we say farewell to Patagonia, we move on to Mendoza, still in Argentina, but a totally different part. We're actually quite north now. Here I stayed for 3 weeks, beautiful surroundings, largely mountains. And Mendoza really has this vibrant energy as it is a university town, a lot of college kids there. But the most famous reason is that it is near some really amazing vineyards. Look no further than Luján de Cuyo. This is where the Malbec grape really made a name for itself, at least as far as New World wines are concerned. And again, elevation, another theme. Because of the high elevation in Luján de Cuyo, the roots of the vines have to work harder. Therefore, the grapes that are produced are actually quite small, but therefore have a more concentrated flavor. And this is really what makes Mendoza wine so special. Most supermarkets sell a bottle of red wine from Mendoza for approximately $2. If you're going all out, you might spend $5 for a beautiful bottle of Argentinian Malbec. As we move on to our next oasis, you sort of got a little hint that I teach English online, and I wanted to tell you how I'm able to make money while I'm traveling. I teach children who live in China. Their ages 4 to 14. And as you can imagine, I'm teaching them English. This is a sequential curriculum where students are placed by their ability level. And we are reading, we're doing some math, we're writing, and even playing games and singing songs. Really just getting these kids to be excited and enthusiastic about the English language. The pay is pretty good. It's anywhere from $16 to $22 an hour. And you basically do it on your own schedule, just keeping in mind that China is roughly 11 to 13 hours ahead of us, depending where you are in the United States. South America, of course, pretty similar to the North American time zones. So usually my mornings, which would be 6 a.m., 7 a.m., maybe 8 a.m., I'd be teaching these kids in their evenings. As mentioned, one-on-one sessions, so you really develop a really nice relationship with some students. I've been teaching English online with VIP Kid for 2 years, and I still have a handful of regulars who I just really adore, and oh my goodness, I've seen some great growth with them. And of course, when you're traveling, you have to figure out how to make a virtual classroom fit into your backpack. I was able to do so with a 1-gallon Ziploc bag, and you can see the items in my classroom are very flat, they're very small, but I use them as effectively as possible to really illustrate some points and key vocabulary words, etc. Surprise! We are back home. Don't worry, the presentation's not over, but actually the reason was that my grandma Pat, who you met earlier outside the Taj Mahal, was at risk of missing her first family reunion in 52 consecutive years. And our family was not about to let that happen, so we instead brought the family reunion to her. People flew in from all over the country, and I flew in from South America.
Oh, hello. Hi, Grandma. Happy for you. I figured I would stay by. How are you? Right? Okay. Hat on?
Max, Henry, and Brian.
Okay.
All right. We should say their names.
Maybe we should get one more. Okay, now 3 boys.
All right, we're going to get a picture.
And I think her look really says it all. And I'm just so happy to have brought that little bit of joy to Grandma. And really, all of these people brought joy to me. It was 2 weeks to really recharge my batteries, catch up with my friends and family, eat at my favorite restaurants while I was in Chicagoland, and really gear up for what ended up being the halfway point of the trip. And back into South America we go, and kicking it off right back in Chile and San Pedro de Atacama, which is a desert. And it's a desert that has lagoons like this one, Laguna Pilar. Those are indeed pink flamingos. We saw thousands of pink flamingos in Atacama. I think my favorite part, though, of the desert was this night sky experience. We were invited to gaze up at the stars 1 hour outside of the Atacama city center. There was absolutely zero light pollution. I've never seen a sky so crystal clear. Maybe in the Australian outback it was rivaled a bit, but Atacama is so special, and people will actually book out accommodation in Atacama 2 years ahead of time in anticipation for eclipses. So keep that in mind for the next one. On to Bolivia, which is landlocked. You'll notice it is really the heart of South America. And if you do get to Bolivia, I hope that you are able to visit Salar de Uyuni. Translated, it's the Uyuni salt flat. And it is the world's largest salt flat. It's the result of an evaporated prehistoric lake. And look at this, it's over 4,000 square miles. And maybe even more impressively, the fact that it is consistently 400 feet deep through all 4,000 of those square miles. I mean, it is just unimaginable the amount of salt that they are producing and exporting to so many folks all around South America and the world as well. Here you're invited to take another tour. This has much more flexible booking than the Inca Trail. I booked my tour with Salar de Uyuni only a day ahead of time. It's a no-frills Jeep tour with very basic guest house accommodations, thin walls, thin mattresses, and the price tag only about $75 a day. So certainly a unique part of the world, very desolate. It feels uninhabitable at some points, and then you just arrive to these oases like these geysers, and you know, you see this alpaca munching on some grass in the foreground, and pink flamingos just hanging out and having a good time. While you're in Bolivia, I hope you do make time to Fort La Paz. This is the actually the largest market that you're looking at in all of Latin America. You could walk for a mile in any direction, and you could certainly fill up your backpack with many souvenirs for yourself and your loved ones. You might even wander over to the Witches Market. Here, shoppers buy things to make sacrifices for Pachamama, who is Mother Earth. And she is a very serious figure in the Peruvian culture, as well as the Bolivian culture in particular. And these fetuses are actually purchased. They are then buried at the like a site that's about to have construction on it. And it's said that by burying the llama fetus in the foundation, that the workers are protected, you know, that they will be safe as a result. So, you know, we think of that as a superstition, but they take that very seriously. I loved Peru so much the first time I had to find a way to return. So I did so in Cusco. This is the next place I stayed a while. I stayed here for 6 weeks. My gosh, what a great vibe Cusco has. Cute little shops and little winding, alleyways, cobblestone roads. It's near Rainbow Mountain. The main reason I went there, to brush up on my Spanish. As I mentioned, I did have Duolingo in my back pocket. I also had a couple years of very basic Spanish in high school, but it was not good enough, and I kind of noticed my level of Spanish plateauing for a couple months. So I got to Cusco. I enrolled at Mundo Antiguo Language School, and the classes lasted for 6 hours a day. We would do conversational Spanish the first half, and then grammatical book work the second half. So kind of putting the elements together. Of course, the classes were led by instructors that are native Spanish speakers. And we got to do Friday field trips. This one was to San Pedro Market, where you can buy fresh fruits, vegetables, and even meat. And I know what you're thinking, and unfortunately, yes, you are correct. These are guinea pigs, which are a Peruvian delicacy called cuy. In fact, they're served at weddings of the elite, and you can have your cuy grilled on the left or fried on the right. And I was able to try both, and I have to give the slight advantage to fried cuy. It reminded me so much of KFC. Just brought me right back home. And if you're also feeling adventurous to continue dining, you may want to try anticuchos. These are sliced, grilled, marinated cow hearts that are then stuck on skewers and served up with some potatoes and sauces to liven up your dish. For dessert, we're having picarones. These are a donut of a sweet potato and pumpkin puree. They are deep fried and drizzled with a berry maple syrup. Another live dance performance. The clips of this dance performance, as well as the live tango show, are available on my YouTube channel. And again, that is available for you to link through my resource guide, which hopefully you have in hand. Next, we get to hike the Rainbow Mountain. The locals call it Vinicunca, but in Spanish, it translates as Montaña de Siete Colores, or the Mountain of Seven Colors. And it's quite a unique destination, I have to say. It was only discovered about 7 years ago, and that's because it had been covered by snow. But unfortunately, due to global warming, it has basically totally melted away. And we are able to see its distinguished stripes due to the mountain's unique mineralogical composition. Let's head into the 9th month and a coastal country. You guessed it, it's Ecuador. There's another passport stamp for you. And with Ecuador, it was beautiful. I mean, it's so wide open, yet there's so many mountainous open regions, but even big cities like this one, Guayaquil, which happens to be the site of our next detour, which is civil unrest. And here I was unexpectedly stranded for a week and a half. This is because the government doubled the price of gasoline overnight. The locals were furious and took to the streets, actually barricading all highways so that basically Ecuador was brought to a total standstill, and that continued until the government reversed this decision. Frankly, protests and rallies were not uncommon. I encountered them all throughout my South American journeys. Main reasons for this include government corruption, cost of living not matching up with salaries, and human rights violations. An example of that would be Venezuela, where the dictator is very brutal. The supermarkets are empty, healthcare is abysmal, and many Venezuelans have to simply flee the country and look for a better life elsewhere. And in fact, I met dozens of really intelligent and highly motivated Venezuelans who would work their butts off in whatever city they were in. Buenos Aires was a common area. Bogota, Colombia, think of any big city in South America, probably a lot of Venezuelans had fled to seek educational and employment opportunities, they'd also send home most of their money to their Venezuelan relatives. So I really admired these people for what they had been dealing with, what their relatives continue to deal with, and you know, the challenges that are still ahead for them. This is Laguna de la Quilatoa, of course, in the namesake city. I guess it's more of a town, but here we have the national flower in the foreground and one of Ecuador's many beautiful volcanoes that you are able to climb. And if you make it to Quito, I'd recommend taking the Teleférico, that is this cable car. Once you get to the top, you can enjoy a picnic, do some hiking, just take in all the beautiful sights of the Quito city center, and then take the cable car back down. And I hope you make time to visit Iglesia de la Compañía. This is a church where there are 7 tons of gold, 7 tons, that's right, plastered all over the ceilings and walls. I would call this the best place of worship that I've never heard of. I think that's the best way to say it, simply because I honestly had never heard of it until I got to Ecuador, and then it just totally knocked my socks off. Photography is not allowed here, but I just couldn't resist, and I really wanted you to see how unique and special that is. Now on to Colombia, and if you're taking notes, we actually went pretty south in South America, and now we're practically at Central America's doorstep. So part of my trip, it didn't always make sense. I was kind of zigzagging as I went along. If I found a cheap flight, I would take it. Didn't always have to make sense. Yet I got myself from point A to point, you know, beta or delta or omega, whatever it was. And Colombia became my favorite country in South America. The #1 reason, the locals. The local people are so excited. They are so proud. They love having tourists. They love to show off their country and are very proud of its people and what they've accomplished. The city of Bogota, wonderful street art here. They have a fine dining cuisine as well as some great street food. Here are a couple of murals done by local female Colombian artists. In Bogota, I also learned how to play tejo. This is the national sport, and you basically get 2 fist-sized rocks and you underhand throw them, similar to how you might play beanbags or horseshoes. If you hit a bullseye, which is what I did there, you'll get 6 points. But if you hit one of the white triangles and they explode, incidentally, they're filled with gunpowder of all things, you'll get 3 points for doing that. It's basically whoever gets the most points. You can play 1 versus 1 or in partnerships. It's quite an enjoyable and challenging game. Definitely bring your earplugs for that. And now to Medellin, and you're overlooking Comuna 13, which was once the most dangerous neighborhood in the entire world, not South America, but the entire world. And probably you recall the bloody days of Pablo Escobar, whose cocaine trafficking related violence and terrorism really brought Colombia to a standstill. So much blood was shed. Fortunately, this ended largely by the 1990s when Escobar was killed. So Brian, why the heck would you stay in Medellin for 6 weeks? Well, fortunately, what I can report to you is that it is a city transformed. The government has invested tens of millions of dollars into the infrastructure, as well as providing jobs and making the city a really safe and comfortable place. I would say if I could live there again for an even longer time, I 100% would. Probably during the pandemic is not the time to do so, but it was just an amazing place to be, I have to be honest with you. The cuisine, beautiful, the nightlife, wild. Also a great place to volunteer. In this case, I helped children in need with Mundo Antiguo. No, that was the language school, not Mundo Antiguo. With Primed Community, and that is fortunately the souvenir shirt that I'm still holding up, the exact one I'm wearing in that picture. It's run by local Colombians, and they basically encourage other South Americans, other travelers to contribute however they can and do whatever they can. So I was able to volunteer with them the whole 6 weeks that I lived in Medellin. And here I was, you guessed it, teaching English, getting to work with some teenagers. And classes ended in late November, but I wanted to continue instructing English with these kids that I had forged a relationship with. So I sort of offered them this informal version of that, and I called it Coffee in English. And you can probably assume what we did. We ordered coffee at a local coffee shop, and we did all things related to English. I really had them lead the conversations. We had them place their orders in English, and of course we played games, like Pictionary and charades. But they would ask questions about complex grammatical rules, or American culture questions like, hey, Brian, can you explain the Electoral College? Which is, difficult enough to explain to a native English speaker, let alone somebody whose first language is not English. But these guys really got it, sharp as tacks, and highly motivated. They had part-time jobs, they were full-time students, and the commute to get to Coffee in English was an hour-and-a-half round trip. So I was really honored that they took it so seriously, and fortunately we still stay in touch on WhatsApp. Then it was my turn to create a GoFundMe. I did one called Christmas Gifts for Colombian Kids in conjunction with Prime's community. They were the leaders of this event, and I was able to get close to 20 friends and family to donate over $500. With this money, I was able to purchase gender and age-appropriate Christmas gifts for Medellin's poorest kids who lived in Comuna Trece. And we created Comuna Trece Christmas. It was just a wonderful block party a couple weeks before Christmas. We had face painting, a pickup game of soccer, lots of music and dancing. We hired a popcorn maker and a cotton candy maker. But what does everyone anticipate? Santa Claus with Mrs. Claus coming in at the end to dole out the presents. And I found out that, this was the only gift of value that the majority of these kids would receive. So to see the looks on their faces, as well as those of the parents, I think it made it probably the single best day of my South American travels. So very happy to have done that. As we move on, Christmas was in full swing. Colombia is a Catholic country, as are the majority of our South American countries, and they are not shy with their Christmas lights displays. Someone else who loves Christmas, Grandma Pat. I think you know her well by now. I was able to call her on Christmas Day, wish her a Merry Christmas, not only tell her how much of an influence she's had on me as a traveler, but frankly, even more so as a human being. So there's one last look from my balcony of my Airbnb in Medellin, a place I certainly hope to return to someday soonish. We'll continue through Colombia onto Cartagena. This is a very photogenic city that is Torre del Reloj, which is the iconic clock tower of Cartagena. Just such a fun city to wander about and get lost in. These colorful streets with this beautiful street art. Street food, a couple of Venezuelan brothers here serving up some delicious grilled meat as well as grilled potatoes, and you can liven it up with some house-made sauces. So, pick food, if you're gonna do street food, pick the stands that are popular, because you're gonna get that probably fresh ingredients, and it's just a great way to dine and be a little adventurous, and you can do it on a shoestring budget. Speaking of shoestring budgets, let's talk hostel life. I think hostels have evolved tremendously in, even in 5 years, but from older patrons who attend these talks, it sounds like hostels were a totally different beast 40 and 50 years ago. Since then, they've invented something called Hostel World. This is where backpackers from all around the world rate every hostel based on security, cleanliness, location, and value. They also can take pictures of that hostel and post them online. Then while you're shopping around on Hostelworld, if you like what you see, you can read the comments and the reviews and book your maybe first, second, and third nights of accommodation. You'll pay a 10% deposit right then and there and pay the remaining balance upon arrival at that hostel. Here's where I met so many great like-minded travelers from all over the world, people that I didn't always agree with in things like politics, but at the end of the day, they're kind of your family away from home. And if you don't mind sharing spaces like the living room, the kitchen, and the bedroom, then you're going to save a lot of money and extend your travels for a very long time. I stayed in 4-bed and 6-bed bunk bedrooms primarily. Headphones as well as earplugs go a long way. You can also stay though in private rooms. You're going to pay more for that, but this is great for crabby single people like myself or couples. And as we hit the 1-year mark, I wanted to treat myself to a special experience to celebrate that milestone and getting to explore the Peruvian Amazon. And another tour we're taking, this one was with Amazon Experience. I think you know by now, I love these small group tours when I can get them for not too hefty of a price tag. Meals are cooked right on the boat by Timo, who was our Peruvian local guide. And of course, you're sleeping in tents because you're literally in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. The bill here is about $100 a day. Your trip could be as short as 1 day or as long as 10. So I did it somewhere right in the middle there. And there's just beautiful flora and fauna, really unique medicinal properties of so many of these plants with their healing properties. And, you know, Timo, he was always on the lookout for wild animals. He always had his binoculars up, and that's how we were able to see these 2 sloths up close and personal. And we also went piranha fishing, and in my case, catching. Piranhas have lived in the Amazon for millions of years, and they indeed have those sharp teeth. So don't get your fingers too close or you're going to accidentally become a snack. On the night hikes, you better watch your step because you don't want to step on a giant tarantula on the left or even a smoky jungle frog who emits a high-pitched scream when in danger. And these little grubs are delicious. You can hack them right out of a coconut-like fruit, and they taste exactly like coconut. When you bite on them, then they explode in your mouth. And locals will also grill these grubs and stick them on skewers. So if you're feeling peckish, it's a nice little protein packed snack for you. And, you know, fortunately, I got to explore the Peruvian part of the Amazon. Fortunately, the Peruvian government takes really good care of their portion of the Amazon. Sadly, the same thing cannot be said about Brazil, which continues to burn as we speak. Here's Chelsea Lopes, who I met on my first backpacking trip around the world. Met her in Australia. She's a Canadian backpacker who has great advice for female travelers.
Hey everyone, my name's Chelsea and I'm from Western Canada. I'm 28 years old, but I started traveling solo when I was 25. It has been the most rewarding and life-changing experience of my life. But a lot of people wonder, is it safe for women to travel solo? The answer is yes. Fear for your safety should not stop you from going, but being very mindful of your safety is important. It all comes down to common sense. It's the same as being in your home country. Bad stuff can happen anywhere, you just have to follow your instincts. Do not take a drink from a stranger. I know it's an obvious one, but it will help ensure your safety when you are in an environment where people are drinking. Don't walk around alone at nighttime. And if you do, don't wear headphones. You want to be fully aware of your surroundings. I would not recommend couch surfing as a way to book accommodation. It's a risk to put yourself alone with a stranger in their home, and it's not worth it to have a free place to stay. Use Hostelworld to book yourself into a hostel. It's affordable, and there are girls-only dorms where you'll probably make lifelong friends. And again, you'll be a lot more safe. Even with these few simple steps, things are bound to go wrong on your trip. Having to deal with rough patches while you're traveling is a very valuable learning experience, and it is very rewarding. There will never be the perfect time, the right amount of money, the perfect circumstances. You just have to book a flight and go. Your life will change if you do this for yourself. I know mine did. Now get out there and go see our big, beautiful world. It's waiting for you.
And she is just inspiring in general, and ladies, I hope that She had a good tip or two to share with you, in addition to her just being such a force of nature. And now onto the biggest country in South America. I'm sure you know it. It's Brazil. And Brazil, another wonderful place to visit. Very colorful, vibrant, high energy. Along the northeast coast, I'd highly recommend visiting these 6, and there are even more coastal towns and cities. It is just such a culture, such a way of life to embrace the beach and to sort of adapt this tropical mindset. Here I met Sydney, who was a Brazilian local. He happened to be on vacation going a similar route that I was, so we got to backpack together for 2 weeks, and he taught me some Portuguese and I taught him some English. He also took me to some really beautiful restaurants and even introduced me to some great street food. Here we have a big chunk of grilled, freshly caught octopus there. I had some great oysters and even something as simple as a chilled coconut, where local vendors shake the trees, put the coconuts on ice, and then for about 75 cents a piece, you, the tourist, can enjoy the fresh coconut water, which is just so nourishing, especially on these 100-degree days in Brazil. As we continue our beach theme through this beautiful country, we go to Florianopolis. The locals call it Floripa. This is the last place I stayed a while, just shy of a month, and it is a beachy island. That is exactly what Floripa is. A great place to just enjoy the sun and relax. Here I met Gabriel, another Brazilian local. He happened to be vacationing in Florianopolis while I was there, and he introduced me to the Brazilian street food called pastéis. And pastéis are a fried pie filled with meat, seafood, and or vegetables. And they're always as big as your head, just like you can see in that picture there. Gabriel was amazing. He took me on some really great hikes and showed me the, I guess, off the beaten path parts of Florianopolis. On to Rio de Janeiro. And this is the site of our next detour, which is bad Uber drivers. You'll notice on the right, my driver took full advantage of the fact that I was distracted by Netflix and even took a nap. I woke up at the halfway point and really was panicking because you could see how far away he was from where he should have been. So he made 1 hour turn into 3 hours. And then in the second example, the driver did indeed drive me to the airport, but then left the meter running. I was probably through airport security by the time he finally pressed end trip. So I think the moral of the story here, you should review your route upon entering your Uber, and don't be afraid to follow along on the map and point out a mistake. They may be doing it unintentionally, or they may be trying to swindle you. Unfortunately, this is just a fact in South America, in particular Rio de Janeiro. Always check the Uber app afterward and message support as soon as you can. I did so in both cases, and my fare was corrected to the original rate. I stayed in a favela while I was in Rio de Janeiro, which is inhabited by poor local people. They're basically unsettled, they are unregulated settlement neighborhoods. So there's a lot of drugs and violence in the favelas. You really have to be careful if you are going to visit or stay there. So just do your research ahead of time. That is Christ the Redeemer, another one of the 7 wonders of the world. He's made of concrete and coated in soapstone. And now he's silhouetted way, way, way in the background there against that white cloud with the Rio city center below. This picture was taken from Sugarloaf Mountain. And when you're hiking up Sugarloaf, you might even encounter some adorable monkeys who are looking to snatch a banana or snack from you. The main reason I went to Rio de Janeiro was Carnival, and it happened to be the week of Carnival. Not happened to be, I totally timed it to be that way. Brazilians are nonstop, and you can turn them up to level 1,000 during Carnival. Singing, dancing, it is just a great time. Probably my favorite part of Carnival was the Champions Parade, where the top 6 samba schools put together their elaborate floats and their carefully choreographed dances. It is just a wonderful way to celebrate in the Sambadrome that is filled to capacity with over 25,000 people. And it's amazing to know that the upcoming Carnival is already canceled. I think it's the smart decision, but I also think about how lucky I am that I was basically at the correct Carnival, because I'm sure some people are already planning on Carnival 2021 and are disappointed that it is canceled. Here's a look at Colombian pesos on the left, as well as Peruvian pesos, or I'm sorry, not Peruvian pesos, those are Uruguayan pesos on the right-hand side. And that relates to our next oasis, which is money. And I certainly saved before my trip. This meant sacrificing some Friday nights out with friends in Chicago and instead squirreling away that money in my savings. As you know, I worked along the way teaching English online. That helped my bank account not decline so quickly. And then I was able to make South America work on a daily budget of approximately $35 to $70. And thankfully I had the Charles Schwab debit card, which I'm actually holding up on screen here in case you can't see it. It's in your resource guide. This card was a lifesaver because they don't charge ATM fees. And I would have racked up over $500 in would-be ATM fees. Instead, they reimburse that money at the end of every calendar month. So I took that $500 that I would have spent on silly ATMs and instead put it towards my 14th and final month going to Uruguay. And you can see, again, we're actually getting quite south in South America. It's that tiny country that's pinched between the south of Brazil and to the east of Argentina. Uruguay is famous for one thing, and that is its beaches. So definitely enjoy some time along its southern coast. Cabo Polonio is totally off the grid. There is no Wi-Fi to be found in that town, and they only run the generators during dinner hours. Uruguayan beaches, not as heavily populated as those of Brazil, for example. So you'll get some private moments to enjoy some sunsets and take in all of the surrounding beauty. This is Colonia, which has a historic neighborhood, which is UNESCO protected. Lovely step back into the past to walk down those cobblestone streets. And getting to visit the world's largest waterfall, which is Iguazu Falls. And here's Garganta del Diablo, which translates to Devil's Throat. This is on the Argentinian side of the falls. You'll have to get your passport stamped and visit the Brazilian side. Hopefully you have 2 or 3 days to do the falls. I thought 2 days was just perfect, but you don't have to rush your way through it. You could just have a day of visiting neither side of the fall. But I thought the Argentinian side was particularly beautiful with all of its great hikes where you could see the upper shelves of the falls as well as the lower shelves, and even getting to take a boat cruise. Now, our final city of the night, at least in South America, is Buenos Aires, my triumphant return, where I got to see my neighbors as well as my friends that I'd made the first time around. They took me to a parrilla, which is an Argentinian steakhouse. The parrilla also refers to that grill on the right, which is filled with wood. And of course, that's lit by the restaurant workers to keep the meat nice and crispy and fresh as you are fighting over it with your Argentinian buddies. And of course, my favorite reunion of them all, probably getting to be with Facundo. Seeing him again, letting him know that I could indeed survive South America, and frankly, it was just to thank him and to let him know that he really was such a helpful factor. Because if VIP Kid fired me for whatever reason, for not being able to teach online because my laptop was robbed, that could have cut my trip down by 20 or 25%. And he really, he allowed my trip to be the full 14 months that I had planned on it to be. Our final detour tonight is hardships. It's not as cheap in South America as it might be in places like Southeast Asia. So just know that going into it, that doesn't mean it's not worth the money, just you're gonna need to save up a little bit. Loneliness will certainly set in, especially when you're backpacking by yourself. Ways that you can cope with this include listening to music. I would write in my journal, or even just strike up a conversation with a fellow backpacker, or even practice my Spanish or Portuguese with local people at the bar, in public, at a restaurant, whatever. And then, you know, fatigue, of course, that's going to set in. Don't try to party every night like some of these locals do, or even some backpackers. You're just possibly going to get sick and end up maybe going home sooner than you would like to. Lastly, coronavirus fears. This is a hardship I never could have guessed or imagined in a million years. It just so happened that I had booked my exit flight from Buenos Aires. I had done so 6 months ahead of time. That was literally as the pandemic started. So it was by pure coincidence that I got on the flight. It ended up being one of the final handful of international flights out of Buenos Aires. And it took me to New Orleans, which I was supposed to spend 5 days in. I was actually gonna meet my best friend there. She wisely canceled, and I decided to basically make it a layover city. At this point, the shelter in place had been put forth by the mayor of New Orleans. And you know, for reference, this is St. Patrick's Day, a look on Bourbon Street. So normally you'd be shoulder to shoulder with thousands of people, probably tens of thousands. And you can see quite the opposite here, quite desolate. And, you know, coming home, it was eerie. I think I was only one of 20 passengers on this plane. And I had to quarantine in a hotel room for 2 weeks before seeing my parents behind me there, and then my sister and niece on the right-hand side. But, you know, these face-to-faces that we had grown so accustomed to have just sort of since been replaced, at least in the meantime, by more of this virtual life that we're all living, or maybe, you know, an outdoor distanced gathering. So our family Easter, certainly a bizarre experience, but we do it because we are making sacrifices to protect ourselves and our loved ones. This takes us to After the Search, where we're going to shortly get to your questions, but I wanted to just share my brief takeaways about myself and other people. First, I was reminded of the kindness of strangers, and in South America, that was no exception. I never had really dealt with anyone too terrible. I really felt like people wanted to help and point me in the right direction. You know, I was comforted by people who were very proud of their culture and their cities, and you know, excited to have an American and practice their English. Striking similarities as well. They want good healthcare, education, and employment opportunities. They want a better life for the next generation. And I really felt like they embody a lot of what we as Americans would also want. You know, a functioning democracy, a safe place for our kids to sleep at night, and you know, opportunities for the future. Lastly, travel yields gratitude. So while all of those facts above are true, I am just reminded over and over by how lucky I am to be a US citizen, and to really be grateful for things like getting water from the tap before the presentation started tonight, and to not have to think twice about that. And you know, to be self-employed and to be able to work remotely, and you know, just to have really such a vast network of family and friends who are so supportive of me, and to know that I have a network of people all around the world that I can keep in touch with and hopefully reunite with at some point. About myself, You know how much I love kids and teaching. That Comuna Trece Christmas event was so very special. I was reminded of how much I am rewarded by any volunteering opportunities that I can find. I am quite persistent and resourceful. I think that is magnified when I am solo backpacking in countries where the first language is not English. It's amazing how we enter survival mode to keep ourselves afloat. I really missed my family and friends. This trip, 14 months, sometimes felt like an eternity. Yet my curiosity still remains. So what's next for me? Well, I had actually supposed I should be in Japan teaching English right now. However, unfortunately, that had been postponed and is now postponed indefinitely. So I hope maybe fall of next year I'll get to do that. In the meantime, I teach English early in the mornings. I tutor students who basically are e-learning. I am sort of their in-person tutor, and I facilitate a group of 3 second graders. I also work one-on-one with a first grader. So getting back to my original calling of teaching the little ones. And of course, getting to do these presentations at night and getting to network with other well-traveled folks like yourselves. So here it is one more time, this passport, which as you can see, actually has no more space left. So if I do want to go to Japan, I better order a new one. But I think about what those stamps and stickers mean. They represent unbelievable places traveled, delicious cuisine tasted, incredible challenges, but really, for me, it embodies the people that I met, the connections that I made, the funny stories that were created as a result of 2 people being in the same place at the same time. And for me, that is what I take away from my trip. Let's keep in touch, folks. If you think of a question after the recording ends tonight, feel free to email me at brmicah@gmail.com. My Instagram is mindfulvagabond. And then if you take a look at facebook.com/mindfulvagabond, you can see an upcoming list of events with other libraries and senior living facilities, encores of this presentation, as well as a journey through kind of the around the world thing that I did before the South America trip, and even a presentation about Myanmar. With that, may your map be filled with many pins. Thank you, everybody. I hope that you enjoyed searching for South America.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Real quickly before we go, does anybody have any questions they would like to raise now? You can put them in the chat, or like I said, you can raise your hand and I can turn on your microphone if you prefer. Not seeing anything. All right.
I'm unable to get to the Q&A has 3 things in there. I'm unable to get into it, but you might be able to see the Q&A. And then, like you said, there's one in the chat.
All right.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'll let you sort and ask away.
With all the local eating and drinking you do you successfully stay healthy, no food poisoning or anything like that?
Thanks for the question, Sally. Fortunately, knock on wood, I generally stay healthy in my travels, specifically in South America. I think I got water poisoning in Buenos Aires. I was foolishly drinking the tap water. It was still kind of early in my trip before I realized that the locals are the ones who should be drinking the tap water, or at least they say so. Whereas our foreign stomachs generally are not acclimated to that. So once I put 1 and 1 together, that problem was quickly solved. And food poisoning, I don't believe I had that at all. So yeah, I'm very lucky. I mean, I think I'm somewhat risky sometimes, but they're calculated risks. So it's sort of the amount of rolling the dice that you want to do and how hard you want to throw the dice. And I think if you can find somewhere in the middle most of the time, that you're going to have really special, unique experiences. And you're not always going to be playing it safe, but you'll also get to have some great memories as a result.
All right. And also, how did you get replacement tech supplies after you had been robbed, and how long did it take you to get things?
So it just so happened that a family friend was coming to Buenos Aires just 3 weeks after the robbery. This was purely coincidence. So what basically happened is, as that money was hitting my GoFundMe account, I would buy items mostly on Amazon.com, have them shipped to my parents' house. And then once it was a few days before that 3 week mark, my mom delivered all of those supplies to that person in basically a carry-on size bag, suitcase. She flew from Chicago. I think she had a layover somewhere, but then got to Buenos Aires, and she stayed with her parents. And then I just needed to coordinate with her to get over to her parents' place. She handed over the technology, and I was able to have that unbelievable second chance. I mean, I don't really know what I would have done. I even thought I might just go home. Like I said, I thought the trip should just be over. I was, frustrated with myself, and I couldn't believe someone would do that to me. But after mourning for a while, I was like, okay, I got to get over it. If I really want to explore South America, I need to figure out a solution. And I was just extremely lucky, but also resourceful.
All right. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, this time I do have the Q&A open, but I don't see anything else coming.
Okay.
All right. So thank you so much, Brian. We will, as I said, record this, and it will be posted on our YouTube page for about a week. That should go up tomorrow. Yeah, thanks very much, everyone. Have a great night.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, and I hope you folks stay safe and well. Have a good night, everyone. Bye-bye.